I begin by acknowledging the contribution of our forefathers who have helped in creating a world based on freedom and human dignity. I extend my respect to people of diverse cultures, faiths, colors, and genders, and pledge to work for equity, inclusivity, peace, and harmony. Good morning to one and all present here. I, Ishika Shah, a first-year student of DMA Media School, welcome you to the 5th edition of the world's first 7-day hybrid international media conference, ICAN5. The International Media Conference, ICAN5, is being organized by DMA Media School of Delhi Metropolitan Education in collaboration with the School of Communication and Creative Arts, Deakin University, Melbourne, Australia. I would like to take a moment and introduce Delhi Metropolitan to our audience. Delhi Metropolitan Education, DME, is an A-grade premier educational institute affiliated to Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, New Delhi, and approved by the Bar Council of India. DME Media School is one of the most promising media institutes in the country. It offers BA in Journalism and Mass Communication. It is recognized as a school focused on the growth of its faculty and students through academic and co-curricular activities. ICAN5 has come with a theme, Inclusivity, Convergence, and Alternative Negotiations, with hashtag Communication for All. ICAN5 has the support of 17 partners, including the International Association of Media and Communication Research, Gender and Communication Section, and GMAC, Global Media and Education Council, as the conference partners. Knowledge partners for ICAN5 are Makhanlal Chaturvedi University, Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh, Vigyan Prasad, Government of India, and KSF, Keshav Suri Foundation. For ICAN5, international partners are Institute of International Journalism, Ohio University, USA, Green University, Bangladesh, and Daffodil International University, Bangladesh. Media partners for ICAN5 are Amar Ujala, The Policy Times, Jai Hind Times, and The Hindi Post. ICAN5 is powered by Asian Media and Cultural Studies Network, Australia, Australia-India Film Practitioners and Researchers Network, SPARK, the Student Council of DME Media School, and RIM, Research and Innovation in Media, Research Cell of DME. The conference is supported by NOTO, National Organ and Tissue Transplant Organization, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India. Since 2018, DME Media School has been organizing the international conference ICAN. The themes for the former editions were India and Changing Aspects of News in ICAN1, Indian Cinema and Alternate Networks in ICAN2, Issues of Community Agenda and News in ICAN3, Information, Communication and Artificial Networks in ICAN4, Inclusivity, Convergence and Alternative Negotiation, ICAN5. ICAN5 will witness a total of 26 sessions, including 18 live sessions, 5 hybrid sessions, and 3 physical sessions. The schedule comprises of 10 technical sessions, 3 workshops, 2 masterclasses, 2 plenary sessions, and 5 panel discussions. Proud to mention here that all 10 technical sessions are being chaired by women scholars representing different states and countries. It gives me immense pleasure that ICAN5 will go live on the official Facebook page of DME for various sessions. For more information, follow us on our social media handles. We are sharing the links in the chat box. I invite Professor Dr. Ambrish Saxena, Dean DME Media School and convener of ICAN5, to give his opening remarks for the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ishika. I begin today by acknowledging the contribution of our forefathers who have helped in creating a world based on freedom and human dignity. I extend my respect to people of diverse culture, faith, color, and gender, and pledge to work for equity, inclusivity, peace, and harmony. I welcome everybody in the first session of ICAN5. Today is day 6, and we are starting with this workshop by Professor Vikram Kishore. Professor Vikram Kishore has been with us right from the beginning when we entered in the second second edition of ICAN in November 2018. And since then, this collaboration has been going on more strong every year with every edition. And this year also, he has been kind enough to bring this session for us. And as we all know, the way we have been conceiving the themes every year. So this year, we decided to keep our focus on inclusivity. And that is one theme, because the convergence and alternative negotiations are also part of the theme. But then most of the sessions we have tried to be revolving around inclusivity. When we say inclusivity, it does not confine to any one aspect of it. It involves that irrespective of all culture, faith, or gender, or any kind of affiliations, or but then this talks about non-discrimination on whatever ground the society is tried to be divided, whether within the country or outside. And these are the issues which we believe need to be tackled at a larger scale. And that is how, as part of this conference, we have tried to have sessions on LGBTQ, physical as well as online sessions. We have also tried to look into the aspect of inclusivity in journalism. One technical session was devoted to that only, then inclusivity in the PR industry. One full panel discussion happened on this, which was brought by Catherine Lencioni, wherein the panelists were there from different European countries. So these are the issues are to be looked into the global perspective, not only in India. And since ICAN is a global platform, so we will try to look into these issues that way. But then essentially it's a media conference, so the media aspect will always be there. Like yesterday only, we had one session which was on documentary filmmaking between India and Pakistan, and filmmakers and academics from both the countries joined. So media in any case is in the fore, because whenever we generate any content, disseminate any content, the media platform has to be there, whichever media platform we use. Now coming back to this session, since Dr. Vikram Kishore is a known filmmaker, until recently also he has been involved in many filmmaking projects, and he has his expertise in the area on which we are having this conference, and that is how he has decided this topic for today's session, which is capturing culture online from podcast to Whatcast. So as I was talking about the different media platform, and digital is in the core. So whatever contents are to be created, so that cultural diversity and inclusivity aspect has to be there. So I am very sure that this session is going to be very fruitful, in the sense that kind of the delivery that is coming from Dr. Vikram Kishore, and I believe the participation will also be huge from the side of the student, because the session, as Dr. Vikram Kishore himself believes in, has to be interactive. That's the beauty of any session. No communication can be from one side. So I believe that interaction will follow, and we will be looking forward to having some really good content coming in from this session. So thank you once again, Dr. Vikram Kishore, for joining this session. Thank you all the participants, all the people who are there part of this session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm happy to share that Journalism at the DME is the official newsletter of DME Media School. This fortnightly publication covers all the media activities happening in and out of the campus. It is a student-centric newsletter carried out entirely by them under the supervision of faculty members. DME TV is our official YouTube channel where you can find the playlist related to all sessions, lecture series, film festivals, and conferences. Today, we have gathered here for the workshop 3. The theme is Representation of Women in Cinema, supported by AIFPRN. The expert for the session is Dr. Vikram Kishore. Before we proceed, I would like to share the profile of the guest. Dr. Vikram Kishore is a filmmaker, academician, and journalist. He has authored and edited books on Indian cinema, celebrity culture, and intangible cultural heritage. He has worked with media channels such as Z News, ABC, SBS, and Channel 7. Currently, he has been capturing stories of cultural flows and its impact on the Indian diaspora in Australia. He has organized international conferences, film festivals, and seminars on Indian cinema. He has been a jury member in various film festivals such as ATOM Awards Australia, Realm Film Festival, Newcastle, Melbourne, Web Film Festival, and Doordarshan National Awards India. He was a pre-jury member of the Australian Academy of Cinema and Television Arts Awards, AACTA Awards 2018. Dr. Kishore is a board member of the Australia-India Film Council, a member of the Victorian Multicultural Commission's Regional Advisory Council, and an advisor to the Scanlon Research Institute. We are honored to have you, sir. And now, I request our expert to take this session forward from here.
Thank you, Professor Amrish Saxena, Dr. Sushmita Bala, and Isika for your warm introduction. It is a pleasure to be here once again, and I share a very kind of a strong relationship with DME, and that seems to continue year after year. But before I start, I would like to recognize the various traditional lands where we are located here in Australia, where I'm joining you all from. I acknowledge the elders past, present, and emerging. I acknowledge and pay my respect to all the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I also acknowledge and pay my respect to the struggles and rights of the Dalits, Adivasis, and the marginalized of India. When we do a conference like this, where the theme of inclusivity is there and looking at alternate communications and various other aspects, it's a very important kind of aspect. It's a very important theme. And this is for the first time that in any university in India or any institute in India, I see a kind of an acknowledgement to diverse people, marginalized groups across the gender spectrum. And it is a very, very good kind of a step that has been taken by DME. And this needs to be done across, almost all the institutes in India. And this is what I learned in Australia is about, being respectful towards your, your heritage, towards your culture, and to the people who own the land. And this is very important. And that's why, you would have heard over the years since 2018, my association with DME, that we always start by recognizing the traditional lands where we are here in Australia, and we acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It's an important step. It is an important step because when the colonizers came to Australia, they almost, drove away, or, there was lots of repression and, marginalization of Aboriginals especially. And now for last 20, 30 years, there is a kind of a trend, not trend, but an attempt to change that and also to acknowledge the traditional owners. And it is very important. And my topic today, culture storytelling online, or capturing culture online from podcast to Whatcast. It is basically about how do we keep our particular perspective on culture and put it on online media, and why it is important to tell cultural stories. Okay. So as media students generally in India, our focus has always been towards, hard news, or when it comes to soft news, it is always about entertainment or, which is very celebrity oriented, cinema, all those things. Culture takes some kind, in a way, a back seat. What I'm trying to tell you and what I'm asking you to do is to look when you are going to do another student project or when you are wanting to do stories for your assignments, probably looking at your culture, looking around yourself will be a good idea and will be a good way to explore possibilities of storytelling. And what I'm doing is that I'm trying to, give you an overview of how to capture culture. Okay, I'm going to use this particular slideshow. If I have the share screen rights, yes, I have. So, and so And I'm going to lead my discussion through this particular uh, slideshow. Okay, so it's very important, as I said, capturing culture. It's not just about talking about culture, but also introspecting where the culture is, how it is, what form it is. Is it dying or is it extinct? Because there are so many cultural aspects that have died. What is culture? Culture is something that we all are embedded in. Culture can be your language. So language is a huge culture. Culture can be the kind of ritualistic celebrations that we do. Culture can be the festivals that we do. Okay, culture can be a different ways of tangible cultures. So yeah, so what I'll be talking to you is, firstly, I'll give you an overview about what culture is about. I'll also give you an overview about where to do your podcasts or what kind of podcasts that you can use. Probably give you a few examples, and then we'll open it up for a Q&A session. So I'll try to use about 20 to 25 minutes in terms of overviews and examples, and then spend around 20, 25 minutes in Q&A session. So at any point of time you have questions, feel free to write it down, put it on the chat box, and we'll take it up from there. Do put your full name so that we acknowledge from whom the question is coming from. So cultural heritage, it's very important that there are different kinds of cultural heritage. And as I just mentioned, there is tangible cultural heritage and intangible cultural heritage. So you see on the right side of the screen, you can see the photo of Colosseum of Italy. It is a tangible thing, a tangible which can be seen, which can be felt, and which is standing there, or which so in Colosseum's thing, it is there. It is, very old structure, represents the Italian history, culture. On the left side is an intangible cultural heritage, the drumming from Japan. And the Japanese drumming is very different, the daiko, it has a kind of a history of almost 3,000 to 5,000 years old. So like these are the two kind of forms of cultural heritage. So when we talk about tangible cultural heritage, anything like buildings, Taj Mahal, or Leaning Tower of Pisa, or what you see here, Eiffel Tower, or on the left side you see the palace in Prague, which is a monument, or looking at various landscapes, books, lots of books are also cultural heritage. Work of art, so that's why you go to museums to see work of art as a heritage thing. And there are lots of, cave arts. If you go, there are thousands of years old cave arts, which is a cultural heritage through which we not only get to know the history, but we also understand what was the culture of those times. So work of art and artifacts. Again, if you look at any of the historical places from Harappa to Mohenjo-daro and all, how do we assess what kind of life they were living or what kind of things were there? So it is through the artifacts that we get to know. So these are the tangible cultural heritage, okay? Tangible, which can be seen, which can be, which is there. While intangible cultural heritage is something which is passed on from one person to another or one generation to another. So what UNESCO says is that intangible cultures are ones that are transmitted from generation to generation, which is constantly recreated by communities and groups in response to their environment. Third is their interaction with nature and their history. Okay, so there are so many things that we do with nature. Okay, with nature worship, or there are festivals around nature. There is sun worship festival. Okay, there are so many festivals like Lohri, or festivals which starts with the harvesting festival and all those things. And again, these are the interactions between nature and human. Okay. Intangible cultural heritage also provides a sense of identity and continuity. Okay, you as a person, your family, your belongingness, all those things also is a kind of a thing, identity. My identity here in Australia can be strengthened by my language. Like I can take pride in saying that I'm a Hindi speaker. Okay, and that is one thing which I take forward, and probably I would like to spread the culture of Hindi, be it through movies or Bollywood movie, or through the kind of cultural forms like dance or music of, which celebrates the language. I can do that. Another important thing is promotes respect of cultural diversity and human creativity. And this is one very important thing. When we talk about diversity, we also talk about side-by-side inclusivity. As Professor Saxena in the beginning mentioned that, the conference is all about inclusivity. Inclusivity is always, it goes hand in hand with diversity, that you have to respect diversity. You have to respect different mindset, different thoughts, different religion, different, kind of, whatever their thinking are, and then, try to be inclusive. It can't be that, oh, there are, if in a group of 10 people where, there are 8 Hindi speakers and then there are 2 Tamil speakers, it doesn't mean that, the Hindi speakers who are dominating, they dominate everything and they become a kind of, they impose their thing onto the ones who are marginalized, okay? You have to be inclusive. You have to give them the chance. You have to find ways how to integrate them in the mainstream. That is your responsibility. The moment you are, you are bigger, or moment you have much more power, your responsibility becomes much more in terms of respecting that diversity and also becoming inclusive. So that is the thing. Respect comes, it is at the center of any of these things. So to give you much more clarity about intangible cultural heritage, these are oral traditions, okay? So oral traditions could be storytelling, okay? So there are lots of storytellings of Ramayana and Mahabharata, which was written 1,000 years back, but it was always orally transmitted. So what we hear and see, it is an oral kind of a history that comes to us, okay? So there is nothing tangible. You don't see anything written, which is there, which was the first form. It has gone through a huge change through the oral history, but that is the oral history, respect. So things like performing arts, so if you look at the dance traditions from Bharatanatyam to Odissi and all, and again, if you look at the roots of these dance traditions, it goes to the Devdasi roots or the temple dance forms and other things where lots of marginalized women were made to dance in temples and all. But then there is a cultural flow which gets again refined and recreated and then added with certain nationalism or sense of pride as well. So performing arts, different kind of performing arts, that's one kind of example. But lots of performing arts are there, which is part of intangible cultural heritage. Social practices, what are the social practices? As I mentioned, festivals, practices like even festival like from Bihar, you can say Chhat Puja. It's again a social practice. It is again festive events, knowledge and practice concerning nature and the universe, knowledge and skills to produce traditional crafts. So lots of craftsmen and craftsmanship. It's very important. And these are also part of intangible thing because it is passed from one generation to another, and there are so many of these craftsmanship that are being lost because the next generation feel that they are not getting paid enough in practicing that craft, and they move on to look for better opportunities. And in some way, some of the finer crafts or craftsmanship are lost, okay? So those are the things, and that's why we talk about cultural heritage or preserving cultural heritage. Okay, language and knowledge, natural heritage, landscapes and biodiversity, all comes under intangible cultural heritage. So start thinking about all these things, that how you can protect and how you can do things. So when I say protection of these cultural heritage, how can we safeguard it? Firstly, how we share those cultural heritage with others. So the more people will know about it, more they will appreciate. The more the appreciation, the more an understanding and why it is required to help sustain it, or how to help it, at least be to live it for a longer time. Storytelling, and this is the aspect where you come in. Okay, as students, how do you tell a story? So any media student, you should never be blocked by the kind of thinking what is going on mainstream. You have to look at alternates, the alternate storytelling. And this is kind of alternate storytelling culture. These days, when I look at news channels, especially in India, I'm really dismayed because news channels have been totally taken over by just political discussions, and that too non-stop, and it is for no end. It's just debate after debate. At one point of time when I used to work in Indian television channel, I was working with Z, and I used to run lots of cultural news and lots of soft stories, and we used to have those kind of programs and space for those programs. Unfortunately, now I see hardly channels are paying attention to that. Of course, now we have niche channels like History Channel or Cultural Channel or things like that, which is good. But somewhere, in the mainstream channels, the cultural stories have taken a backseat until unless someone is vandalizing a culture or someone is saying something really terrible, then only become news. All right. Otherwise, it's of no news or no use. And that is unfortunate. But for us, for the next generation, newsmakers, filmmakers, documentary filmmakers, storytellers like you, podcasters, whatcasters, for you to think, okay, if not all, maybe few of you might be taking up these kind of storytelling in your particular projects, in your way to take it over. Okay, so sharing with others, storytelling, news, archiving. Archiving these cultural histories are very important, and I've been doing that for long. I've been archiving especially Chow dance from West Bengal, the Purulia style of Chow dance, and I have compiled a huge resource around that. And my whole thing is that to see how the change is going through in this particular cultural form. And I've been able to write, not only articles, but my PhD was also focused on Chow. So you can pick up, elements and, do research, do articles. So of course, at the end, the ultimate, what you are going to give out by doing these kind of stories is to educate, inform, create awareness. Again, as I said at the beginning, inclusivity and celebrating diversity becomes important when you're doing. So why cultural storytelling is important? In fact, I just talked about why it is important. It is important that we continue what is happening, what is in our history, what our family has given us, but which are open-minded, which are not, do not think of culture as a compartmentalized thing. Culture should be also open to discussions and dialogues. And if there is some culture which is problematic, which is discriminatory, which is oppressive, then that needs to let go. Okay? The good aspect of culture to celebrate communal harmony, to celebrate, universal kind of, brotherhood, to celebrate equality, and to celebrate one's own unique features. That should be really, really, one needs to cling on to, but not onto something which separates you from, which makes you us versus them. Okay. Us versus them always becomes problematic. Okay. So when you're doing cultural story, it's important that you need to understand why you are doing that. You are not going to become a kind of a cultural feudal lord that this is my thing and nobody is going to touch it. Or if anybody says something against this, then I'm just going to go out and get after them, and that is what is happening. Lots of these kind of cultural discussions or things where people appropriate or misappropriate culture is becoming very, very political in its nature. Okay, so we have to also understand, and of course, it is a very different kind of a topic to discuss. So I'm going to limit my comments on that. But cultural storytelling is important, firstly, to understand who we are, to understand our history, also to learn from it, and to see how that can be incorporated in our future lives. Okay, so those are the things that cultural storytelling is important. And it's also important to acknowledge what others are doing. So why online storytelling? Well, I don't need to tell you why online storytelling. It is important, like television, mainstream television or radio. Online storytelling is probably the most accessible thing for any student or for any newcomer to get started, to have their own channel and to start podcasting or whatcasting is the easiest thing to do. That you can do right from your day one. Once you start your media course, you can start working through that, create your own channels on YouTube or Vimeo, or you can go on to podcasts, create a podcast channel on Apple and then different places, and you can start talking and doing that. Even if it is going to be amateur level, still, what is important is that at least you can start thinking in terms of storytelling elements and all. Same thing goes with podcast. So podcast is something where we are focusing only on audio, something like radio. Okay, so basically podcasts are kind of a discussion point that is recorded in an audio format and put it on various podcast platforms. Okay, whereas Whatcast is where you record any video streaming thing. Okay, it can be interview, it can be first person point of view, it can be a discussion, it can be a chat show, and then you put it on any of these video platforms. So if you want to host podcasts, so there are various podcast hosts, but I've just listed some of the free podcast hosts that you can look up and maybe create a free account and start trying to do something in terms of podcast. And you don't have to think about the length of the podcast. Okay, it can be anything from 1 minute to 10 minutes or 30 minutes or 2 hours or things. But then there are different when you are hosting, they have different levels of how much length that you can put it online. Okay, or how much space you have. Okay, so depending, so free hosts generally have a kind of a limit in terms of time and in terms of the kind of hosting space that they have. So something like Buzzsprout is very good, Podbean, Spreaker, Anchor, Podomatic, Acast, SoundCloud, and Red Circle. So these are really interesting ones and important ones. And how to host podcast: Vimeo, YouTube, Facebook, anything that takes videos. All right, so like you can you can use any of these particular platforms to do your particular podcasts. And there are different ideas or different things that you need to take and keep in your mind when you are creating a cultural podcast or podcast. Okay, and of course you must be learning all these things in your classes as well, but I'll just give you a kind of a quick roundup on what all things you need to do, and I'll just share my screen as well. So firstly, what you need to do is decide the theme or topic of your podcast. Okay, who are your target audience? It's very important. Whenever you make a story, you make it for a specific group. Good thing about online media is that once it is there, anybody can access it. Okay, so your target audience can always expand, but you need to have a target audience. That who are you going to tell the story to? Then format of podcast or Whatcast. Are you going to have a kind of an interview based? Are you going to have kind of a storytelling thing? Are you going to fictionalize it? Are you going to have a kind of non-fiction element to it? So there are different format of podcasts that you can work on. You can also create experimental podcasts or experimental podcasts where you use different forms in one particular storytelling. Length of the project, are you going to make a 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes? All these things are very important. Are you going to create a series of that? Also putting your title of your project and then doing scripting and interviewing if needed. Your podcast or Whatcast production space, like simple things. You all have access to Zoom. Today, you all have joined me via Zoom. So Zoom can be easily used for podcast and Whatcast. You can just record yourself on Zoom directly and save it, okay? And then you can edit it later on, or you can just directly share it, okay? So you can record video, or you can just record audio and just share whatever you want. And Zoom gives you the option to do both. Or Riverside FM, that is another kind of a website. Audacity is a software, or Final Cut Pro, Adobe Premiere Pro, all these websites where you can, softwares where you can actually create. And you are media students, so of course you would have access to these particular softwares, at least in your university. So once you record, create, and edit, and make it ready for final distribution, and you can also do a launch. It's always good, even if you're an entrepreneur and newcomer, always do a launch, get 10 people to come in and get them to hear it, get their feedback, enjoy. It's always good. It's not that today the format has changed. Okay, so you can celebrate. You can create a Facebook page for your project and then announce to the world. You can premiere it on YouTube. You can promote and boost it. So yeah, I'm just going to stop it here. And yeah, probably it's because I know I'm short on time as well. So it will be good to have some questions before we talk more about it.
Okay, I think I can see a few questions in my chat box.
Yeah, Shruti, whenever you want to ask me a question, please.
Gurveen is asking you, something as changing with time, such as oral traditions. How could we preserve and inculcate inculcate these oral traditions into cultural practice, mainstream cultural practice?
Well, oral tradition depends what kind of storytelling or things that you want to use or preserve. Okay. Inculcating into mainstream cultural practice, that is probably something difficult, but depends where they are sitting. Okay, it depends where they are sitting. So for example, oral traditions, like as I mentioned, Ramayana, Mahabharata, or storytelling from Puranas, those are always mainstream. Okay, so a huge chunk of Hindu cultural groups, celebrate that, and not only Hindu cultural groups, but worldwide it has its takers. In fact, just recently, one of the finest theater director, Peter Brooks, he passed away, and he made one of his own interpretation of Mahabharata, which was worldwide, accepted. People really watched it for years and years. So he took the story of Mahabharata across the world in a very minimalist kind of a storytelling format of Mahabharata, as opposed to what you see in TV series, and it was done for theater. So similarly, there are also different dance groups, the dance cultural groups or dance forms, music forms that are preserving those things. But it is important that we engage with that. And how do we engage with those? Is to not only, go and participate, watch those kind of cultural traditional forms, given a chance. And that's one thing which I have seen, is that if in a theater there is a folk form that is being practiced or that is being performed in Delhi, vis-a-vis latest Bollywood release, people will end up going to the Bollywood film rather than spending those odd bucks into that folk performance. So there is also a need to change that kind of attitude and become much more inclusive in your approach of watching these kind of folk performances and all. And I've seen this culture grow quite in a huge way in Europe. In Europe, almost every small town and counties and countryside, they have these cultural, yearly cultural festivals. And I've been part of these yearly cultural festivals where they invite dance and music groups, which are of different culture, at least 7 or 8 different countries every year, to come and perform. And in that way, not only they are preserving their own culture, so they have their own dance groups and all which perform, but they interact with other dance groups, watch them, they understand their culture, and they become much more, a kind of they become aware. In fact, I should show you this particular story which I wanted to show you. So I'm just going to share this. Just for 2 minutes, I'm going to do that. Okay. So share screen.
We keep the tradition of our family, and we are very proud because we can show to everybody at all the world what we can do and what we can play.
It's a place where the culture of the world come together in one place.
It's very nice to see all the people, to see all the different nationalities, and it's great.
Culture. At the heart of every society are its stories. Stories told through dance, through music, and through ritual. It seems as though this way of life is becoming a thing of the past, slowly disappearing. In this growing world, it's the persevering storytellers who keep culture alive. Pride in tradition and celebrating music, dance, and art, the intangible aspects that make their culture unique. Nestled in the countryside of central France is the small, picturesque town of Ghana. This quiet village is home to just over 6,000 people. But for 10 days each July, this small town puts on one big festival.
So this was kind of a glimpse from this festival back in France, where I've been associated for last 20 years now. I've been working with them. And this was where I took a group of students. I took 5 students to work in the festival as filmmakers. So they made this documentary. So they both, Luke and Grant, are my students. Back in 2013, they made this documentary on this particular festival where they invite about 20 different countries with their folk music and folk dance form. So that is a kind of a way of making it mainstream. Now this is a mainstream festival happening in France because they have made it an event. Every year, it happens. It has been happening for this year it's going to be, it's their 49th year of festival. Next year we'll be celebrating 50th year. So that's how things are made mainstream. When you are celebrating it in a kind of a scale, you are involving people of the community and get tourists also. So lots of times. So, and in India, I also see that there are lots of cultural festivals which have become tourist attractions. So that's how you make it mainstream. Just to answer, I think, Shikha's.
Then we move on to the next question. Manik is asking that the intangible cultural attributes are passed on from generation to generation. Do you think that new technology and new methods that arise with the coming generations affect the traditional methods of passing on these kind of cultural activities?
Absolutely. Listen, culture is never constant, all right? And new technologies, be it in ancient times also, for the next generation, there will be something new, okay? And culture keeps on evolving. Culture is never stagnant, okay? It's like a river, it keeps flowing and it might keep on merging onto new things. So whoever thinks that culture has to be in this form, okay, because some, at one point of time, people would like the women to be all covered up and with ghungat and everything, but that's not the culture. It changes, So even the representation of women has changed and people change, okay? So things change. So in terms of culture, and this is a very, very important question that you have asked. And this is the question which is always about the Puritans versus more modern outlook people. And lots of Puritans think that, okay, the culture has to be like this and we have to do this and we have to do that. But when did that started happening? Because at one point of time, you thought that, a god should be worshipped in a certain format or in a certain form, and then you want it to become like that, but people might have different interpretation. It can move from one place to another, okay? And that is what needs to be respected, that if I want to, I'll give you another example, a very simple example. Like when Durga Puja in India is celebrated, you celebrate it for 10 days, okay? When we come to Australia, now we are not getting, the kind of accessibility or the kind of holidays during Durga Puja or Diwali. So what people are now doing is that those 10 days are being condensed in 2 days, and this is being done over the weekends. So Saturday, Sunday becomes 2 big days of Durga Puja, or Diwali from the main, if it is on Wednesday, it will become on a Saturday or a Sunday, because that is feasible and that is okay. And that is how you keep on the cultural continuity yet. So you don't have to be coded into a particular date and all. You can pay your respect and all on the date it is happening. But because we have been uprooted from the main cultural area and we are coming to a different place, we have to respect what is happening. We can't start demanding, oh, we need a Diwali holiday or we need a Durga Puja holiday. We are not going to do Christmas. No, we are also going to do Christmas, but we are also going to find ways to celebrate our own particular cultural things. All right. Same thing goes with celebration of Eid or any Jewish thing. They find their ways and they find the ways to survive, to celebrate, and to organize within those kind of celebration. And lots of times things get lost. Okay. If there are not very many people, then those cultural practices get lost as well. So it is a kind of a very double-edged question, but a very, very important question which you have asked, Manak. And I feel culture should always be open to changes, to technology. Like I'll give you an example. Again, in Ghana Festival, they would never allow any modern outfits to perform in the festival because they only wanted a kind of their own setup, thinking that it needs to be, which represents the older culture. But later on, we started having discussion with UNESCO, and UNESCO, and then the first one of the slides I used, and I'll go back to that slide, and it says provides a sense of identity and continuity. Okay, so continuity of the sense. Okay, so till the time you understand what is important, what are the ethos of it, the moment you remove it and make it a spectacle, then there is a problem. Like in Bollywood, suddenly you see, people there was this film, Goliyon Ki Ras Leela, and then this is based in Gujarat. And then when they are doing a carnival types, and there is chow dance of West Bengal, chow dancers, jumping all over behind the hero. So chow dance was not being used for being chow dance, but it was being used as an exotic thing to bring that color and to use it as a prop. So what it did, it just in a way took out the whole importance of the dance form, and it just made it as a backdrop. While if you look at another movie, Barfi, which is set in West Bengal, Darjeeling, and all those areas, and there where chow dance comes, it comes as a kind of a landscape of the area. So what the director celebrates, he celebrates the dance form as a part of the culture and not devoid of the culture. So when it comes there, you feel that, yes, this is a natural thing. And at the end of the film also, when the chow dancers dance, with Ranbir Kapoor out there and Priyanka Chopra, it looks very natural. Whereas in Goliyon Ki Ras Leela, or even a couple of other films where they use it as a prop, that is problematic. Okay, I hope you get my point there.
Yes, yes. Shiksha is also saying that she got some really great points on recording podcasts. But just recording and updating won't be enough. Can you suggest some points on promotion and how can we find target audience for podcasts?
Well, it's very important, firstly, to know what your topic is. And once your topic is there and where you have recorded everything, create a community. Okay, how to promote it is to create a community or be a part of a community. Okay. So how I would go with my particular storytelling. Okay, so for example, and this is what I teach in my class for students to distribute their project. So for example, if somebody is doing a story on culture, if they have created a podcast, I would ask them to firstly create a page. Okay, a page on Facebook. Okay, create a YouTube page, create a teaser that this is the story that is going to come out. Okay. And on Facebook page, start inviting as many people that who can like your page. Okay. Also start becoming members. So go on Facebook, type in group, cultural groups, and see how many cultural groups are coming. Okay. You're not going to become member of all cultural groups, but fine. So if I'm going to do something on Indian culture, then I'm going to find all the cultural groups which are focusing on India. And then I'll also create a demographic thing, population thing. I'll see I'm going to become member of only those groups which has 5,000 or more members. And then I'll join those groups. And once my product is ready, I'll post it on my page. And then I'll see which groups allow, me to post my film or teaser or my podcast out there. And I'll start sharing there. And then you see that automatically there are engagements on your particular project. All right. So there is a whole lot of things. And also you have to look at building your audience on YouTube. There is also a different kind of parameter of how to build. Firstly, you have to constantly create lots of, at least a kind of a decent amount of, content for YouTube, for you to get a kind of a collaborator or partner, verified partner, thing by YouTube. And once you are there, you will see that lots of times YouTube is driving your particular video to lots of people automatically through, when it comes onto the drop-down menu where automatically it plays. And then, of course, now what they have done, all these online platforms or social media platforms, they know how to do business. So what earlier they were doing it free of cost, now they are also wanting to make money out of it. So if you have the fund, or if somebody is paying you, you can always boost your posts. Okay, so for $10 you can reach 3,000 people, or $20 you can reach 4,000 people. So look at what are the kind of money. If you have the money, definitely, if you are starting up, if you are not able to get those kind of audience, to drive audience, you can also use boosting at times. Okay, but within your university or institute, I would say create those Facebook page, YouTube page, where you all are members, where you all are organic, audience and subscribers to each other's, pages. So that's how you create a community of practitioners, and you create a group of audience as well. And from there you develop, and from there you can see that how fast you can progress. Sometimes the progress isn't there if you're not doing enough, but online landscape is such that you have to constantly engage yourself in this space. If you do not engage with your audience, if you do not comment or give your feedback to the comments, then you would see that the engagement doesn't grow. All right. Any other questions?
Shruti?
I think she's got hanged.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm back now. I think we'll take one last question. Shifa is asking that what happens in the case of controversial cultural practices which are contrary to human rights? How do we approach it in this cultural storytelling or retelling?
Well, another good question. And human rights and culture and things like that, it's always interrelated. So depending on what kind of story you are going to tell, if you are going to uphold a cultural thing, like recently I saw this movie called Prithvi Raj, and it had like a 5-7 minutes dance of these women before they are jumping. So it's a kind of a thing, but I felt they are somewhat glorifying Johar and that's whatever Sati Pratha and all. I just didn't like it. I thought that there is no need of glorifying or putting in 10 minutes of a song and dance and of the valor and all. You might disagree with me, but at today's time, I feel there's no need. A reference to that, maybe a 2-minute scene of that could have been good, but that whole contextualizing of it and making it, such anything which is repressive, even if a person wants to die for you, I don't think it's right. Even if at the expense that they are going to be killed by a terrorist, and if they have a choice to kill themselves. Now, this is a very ethical question. Probably my ethics doesn't allow me to do so or think in that way. Yours might, but I still feel it is a kind of a situation. It's a thin ice where lots of people will always thinking. But when it comes to culture, always see, and as your question is about human rights, see, does it respond to humanity? Does it rob someone else's humanity? Does it put down someone else? Does it oppress someone else? If it is doing those, then that is not culture, okay? Then that is oppression. That is cultural oppression, okay? And you need to be careful about that, okay? Culture, just because at one point of time it was validated, just because at one point of time it was celebrated, doesn't mean that today will have the same relevance or the same kind of significance that it was then, all right? And that's what whole lot of people, especially very conservative ones, wants that kind of cultural thinking to come in today. Don't fall into that trap, okay? We should celebrate our culture, we should celebrate our differences, but not at the expense of others and not at the expense of trampling other people's freedom of expression and their own culture.
Thank you, sir. And this session was very interesting, and we had so many questions from our students also. But since the paucity of time, I think we will move on to the next segment of the program. Over to you, Ishika.
Thank you, sir, for such an enlightening session. All the participants are requested to fill out the feedback form given in the chat box. You will receive participation certificates post filling out the form. Now I invite Professor Dr. Susmita Bala, Head DMA Media School and Chief Associate Convener ICAN5 to give the concluding remarks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ishika. Yes, culture is celebrated always. Thanks, Dr. Vikram Kishore, for giving us more insight in inclusivity and diversity, which is very much the theme of the conference. Cultural and cultural heritage are really important for subsistence and growth of a society. Podcast, Whatcast, tangible, intangible culture, as explained by Dr. Vikrant, is again important for keeping us rooted and at the same time acknowledging diversity. Thank you. Thanks to Dr. Vikram Kishore for your support and this very nice workshop. And thanks to all participants of this session. Thank you. Thanks to all of you.
Thanks, Susmita. Bye, everyone. Thanks. Have a nice session later on. Bye-bye.
With this, we come to the conclusion of Workshop 3. Sincere thanks to management of DME, Aman Sahani, Vice Chairman, Justice Bhavar Singh, Director General, Professor Dr. Ravikant Swami, Director, for their support in every interviews being taken by DME Media School. Heartfelt thanks, Dean Media School, Professor Dr. Amrish Saxena, Head Media School, Professor Dr. Susmita Bala, for their motivation in planning and executing the flagship event of Media School. Thanks to Dr. Manasvi Maheshwari, Associate Professor and Associate Convener of ICAN5 for overall coordination for the International Media Conference. Thanks to Sumantra Sarthidas and Vishal Sahai, Assistant Professors, and Yogesh Sharma, Faculty at Media School for Digital and Production Support for ICAN5. Thanks to Dr. Manmeet Kaur, Associate Professor, and Pramod Kumar Pandey, Assistant Professor, for their efforts in supporting ICAN5. Thanks to Shruti V.S., Assistant Professor, Media School, for managing technical and cultural team along with student coordination. Mohammad Kamil and Sukriti Arora, Assistant Professors, for newsletter, press briefings, and media coordination support. Dr. Ritika Saxena, Assistant Professor, for designing and creative support. Saima Parvez and Dr. Sumedha for their support with social media management. I also thank Pavan Saxena and Mool Mehta, Tulika Arora, CM Anand, Abhishek Yadav, Jagan for administrative and logistic support. Student Convener Priya Yadav for her consistent support in ICAN5. All student coordinators from newsletter, production, hospitality, anchoring, cultural and digital operations for their coordination and consistent efforts for the conference. Thanks to all the researchers, participants who have sent their full research papers for this International Media Conference, participants of various sessions. Special thanks to our conference partner, knowledge partners, international partners, cultural partner, and media partners. Requesting everyone to please turn on their camera for a group photograph.
Okay, done. Ishika, carry on.
Yeah, we're done.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. And now I take your leave. Next, we have 8th technical session in physical mode at DME campus. The chairperson of this session is Dr. Ruhi Lal Thakur. Thank you everyone. Have a great day.